In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to stitch the harp player. We're going to start the stitching with the satin stitch trousers. So I'm going to start down here. I have my musician mounted up into a hoop, and now I'm working with 3 strands of thread. If you want to see a video on how to split the thread, then refer to the how-to guide section of the website in the footer, and you'll see a video specifically on this step. So with my needle threaded up with 3 strands, I'm going to now start filling in this top yellow edge of the trousers. Now you can see that I started at the highest point in the triangle. That is generally the easiest place to start to get it looking neater. So you don't need to always start at the end of a row. Look to see how I'm slightly jumping around between the sections. It just makes me be able to get neater stitches in. There is also a video showing you a bit more detail on how to do satin stitch in case you don't find it clear enough in this video. However, as you can see, I'm just working in a round, creating these stitches. You can work in the same way I'm doing here, where you keep your needle on the surface, or you can take it through to the back, whatever you find easiest. And so I'm just working down the row now, filling out these shapes. And you can see I've repeated that on the lower half. I'm now going to go in and fill in the darker red. Now you have a choice here to either fill the dark red the whole way across and stitch the chain stitch line after, or to leave a gap. But I prefer to stitch the whole way across as it's just a bit quicker. So I've got my dark red and I'm just going to work the whole way across the shape now. So you can see I'm just filling in and it's starting to look quite neat. And whilst I've covered over the line that's going to show me where to put my chain stitch, I know that I'm just going down the middle, so I'm not too worried about it. Now I'm getting my brighter red, and I'm going to just repeat this exact process, getting this extra line of satin stitch in on the frills on the edge of the trouser. So once I've got the satin stitch filled in, I'm going to go in and add my line of chain stitch on top. I'm going to be stitching this the whole way across the top of the leg. Now here I'd recommend you fill the legs in entirely in the satin stitch before moving on to this stage, but I'm just filling in a short area for the purposes of this demonstration. So I'm just using a chain stitch here using a linked method, and there is a separate video in the how-to section showing just how to do the chain stitch. So if you can't understand it fully from this video, do take a look there as well. You see I've created a first small stitch, and then I'm running the needle underneath that stitch to create my first chain. And then working along the line, running underneath the previous stitch to create a row of chain stitch. And I'm just aiming to put this roughly in the middle of the red section, the dark red section. So once I've got that line added in, the final finishing touch for the trousers is this row of gold in running stitch going round the edge of the trouser. And this is a wonderful way of just making all the finishing touches look quite neat. So I've got my needle threaded up here with 3 strands of gold. And I'm just going to stitch some short little stitches, trying to keep them all as even in length as possible. So I'd repeat that across the whole trouser leg. Now that short little running stitch I also use in other areas, like the bright blue to outline the feet, the face and the hands. So I'm using exactly the same style of stitching to outline those areas. Now I also just want to show you how I've stitched the arms of my harp player, again using a satin stitch, but I'm just using the satin stitch in quite a casual way just to stitch out these triangle shapes. So you see I'm just creating the shapes, the triangles in the light yellow, and it's just a way of me enhancing how it looks on the fabric. Once I get to the end here, I'm just going to now show you how to do my chain stitch edging as well. You don't have to do this all in one go. You can absolutely sort of stitch all the triangles first and then do the chain stitch, but for ease in this video I'm just showing you it now. So I'm going to create my chain stitch starting so the inside edge of the arms is in the pale yellow, and I'm creating my chain stitch in exactly the same method that I used on the trousers. So I'm using here a link method. I'd get all the satin stitch triangles done before going on and creating this chain stitch edge, but I'm just doing it partially here to show you for the basis of a demonstration. And then on the outer side of the sleeve you can see I'm using the brighter red, which I just connect into my paler yellow chain stitch. Now you'll always find with the chain stitch it's a little bit hard to get these outer edges on the triangles neat, because the chain wants to pull in and so it will smooth off all your corners. So just kind of pull the thread into place as you're stitching your chain stitch. But you don't need to do anything different when you're stitching the corners. You just follow the line round. So you see here I go above and beyond the top and then I just lay it down in place. And it's just helping me create a nice edge. So the next thing I want to show you is filling in the shirt and his hair, and this is entirely filled in with French knots and it's really simple. I'm just using lots of French knots. Now what I just showed you there was, I'd say, fill in the entire sleeve before you do this stage. So make sure you've done the full outline on the sleeve before you start creating all these French knots. It'll make it easier. There's a separate video in the how-to guide section of the website showing you specifically how to do French knots, but you can see here what I'm trying to do. And all I'm doing is I'm using lots of small French knots and I'm filling them out as closely together as possible. So you're just going to repeat this entire thing to totally fill out the body and the hair. You'll be a master French knotter by the end of it. I'm also using French knots across the belt, but we'll come onto those. Now I'm just going to show you how to work with the gold. And whilst all this section is done in satin stitch, gold can be a bit fiddly to work with. And so one thing I recommend is mixing in to your thread a strand of pale yellow. So I'm going to use 2 strands of gold and 1 strand of pale yellow. And this just makes it easier to work with. As you can see, I've got threaded up there. You won't really see the yellow in the finished piece, but it just makes the whole process much more satisfying to stitch. So I'll continue that method across the crown, the harp, and across his shoes. I'm also using the satin stitch across the belt, so I'd fully stitch that and then just add in some French knots across the top, exactly the same way you have done before. And so that's it. That's your harp player. I do hope you enjoy it.